So if someone were to ask you, what is the new biology? You break it down in a very, I know it's a very complex thing that you go into detail in your book, but what is the condensed version of that for, yeah.
Okay, so here, I think what helps people understand is that for quite some time, people have been told that genes determine disease risk, and that we inherit these codes from distant ancestors that, hundreds of thousands of years old, like that we have no control over these vectors of lethality. Let's say someone is told they have BRCA 1 or 2, breast cancer susceptibility genes 1 and 2. Some people are literally preemptively or quote prophylactically removing their breasts and their ovaries because of this. It's so sad because they misunderstand the role that these genetic patterns actually play in mediating, sort of health risk and environmental factors and all the things that go into creating disease or health. And so what I would love people to understand is that's the old biology, and it's really mythological in construction. We now know, again, given that the complexity of life is not reducible to a set of protein coding genes. In fact, 98% of the genome has been called junk for all these years, and now we know it's transcribed as well. And many of the transcripts are RNAs, which actually are extremely complex. Like it's like an ocean of nucleic acids that we're just starting to understand what they're doing. Well, microRNAs are actually extremely important in coordinating the expression of these protein coding genes, and some of them are found in foods. So when you're eating certain fruits and vegetables, they're actually modulating the expression of your genes. It's like software for the hardware of your body. And so that's one of the fundamental discoveries in the new biology, is that animals have outsourced the regulation and expression and even control of some of their genes to the foods they eat. And so that means that suddenly food isn't just a source of food calories and building blocks like proteins and lipids, etc., but they're actually forms of indispensable biological information. And when you take certain information out of this exquisite machine, let's say it's eating certain fruits and vegetables, which we've been doing for hundreds of thousands of millions of years, instead take conventionally produced, agrochemically grown, genetically modified food, we've altered the code. It's as if you're putting viruses and disinformation into this exquisite software. And so that's a new way of understanding the relationship and helps us to better understand what's at risk when we're eating badly versus the incredible value nutrigenomically that food has when it's consumed and raised locally, and it has a good microbiome from the soil. This is literally a way to reprogram and completely regenerate your health depending on what you're eating.
Yeah, it's revolutionary in the sense that we've been told that genetics determines our future, right? And Bruce Lipton, a colleague of mine who is in my documentary about cancer. One of the things that he's an epigeneticist, and one of the things that he shared that I thought was really fascinating is that it's like genes are like blueprints. You can't, they're not like on or off. They, as you said, modulate the expression. So depending on the environment that they're in. And what his research really shows is how our thinking, our mind, our beliefs, our visualizations actually can change the environment that the cells are in, and can modify the expression of those genes. And what I thought was, and then the other thing he said, going back to the BRCA1 gene with breast cancer, he said if genes cause, if that gene causes cancer, then every woman who has that gene would have cancer. But 50% of the women who have that gene never get cancer. So clearly it's not the gene that causes the cancer, right? It's the environment in which those cells are in that determine whether it becomes cancerous or not. And what I thought was really fascinating about what you share in the book is you're talking about the exact same thing, but from a nutritional standpoint, from how the information in the food speaks with our cells with our genes on a cellular level. And to me, it makes perfect sense. But I think, it's maybe one of the first times I've heard it explained the way you've explained it. And I think it's totally revolutionary.
Well, yeah, it's a very complex topic. And interestingly, when it comes to the so-called Broca mutations, which is a very derogatory and misleading way to describe about variations that confer certain advantages in certain contexts. For example, celiac disease might have protected those who were, for example, susceptible to cholera toxin and help them survive through the reproductive window. So they might die at 37 on average, but they're still reproducing, and it still helped them actually potentially survive another deadly vector, malaria, and other examples of, there are many of them actually, of where we see pathologies in a new light when we understand that they have adaptive value in certain ways. And Broca is an example. There's actually over 500 variations that have been identified, and some of them confer survival advantage from treatment for breast cancer. So the very concept that there's just this monolithic, inexorably lethal genetic defect that is going to result in disease is unfortunately as primitive as some kind of medieval, concept of a demon infecting, our bodies. There's no real difference. And it is, unfortunately, a kind of sorcery we participate in. It's called the Nocebo Effect, actually. And it's this outsourcing of one's power and belief that healing and one's destiny is only, sort of in the hands of the person in the white coat or the shaman. And this has been actually documented. It's discussed in my book, but there was a study with over 500,000 Swedes that found that when they received their cancer diagnosis test results, if they were given a positive result, they had up to 26.9-fold increased risk of heart-related death within 1 week. The worse prognosis cancer, like brain, the faster it happened. So the idea is that they died of being heartbroken and of fear. And it's called bone pointing. Prognosticizing is a form of foreknowledge, right? To see before, and it might as well be crystal ball reading. We're still doing that in modern medicine. The clinical setting is ritualistic, and we are at a time where we can pull back and take back our power when we realize that we had it and we gave it away to begin with.